At some level, I mean, there's a serious movie going on here, but we are trying to do a very stylized movie.
This is a right-wing group of empty-headed, beautiful people doing exactly what they're told to do.
Everyone fights, no one quits.
This is a war picture.
All hell's broken loose and there's nothing you can do about it. Fight or die.
We were inspired by the posters and by the slogans and even by the philosophy of the Second World War.
You kill anything that has more than 2 legs, you get me? We get you, sir!
It obviously is a film that has its tongue in its cheek, that's trying to undercut the very society that it's portraying.
Would you like to know more?
I just had in mind this is Sandra Dee and Troy Donahue go to outer space and fight giant bugs and become Nazis.
Starship Troopers was first published in 1959. It won the Hugo in 1960. And it also caused quite a bit of controversy, quite a bit of stir.
It concerns a lot of the things globally, problems that we face today. Rising militarism, rising fascism, the loss of individuality. People just didn't write these books back in 1959. Robert Heinlein was born in Butler, Missouri in 1907 and was always fascinated with the Navy and with engineering and with military tactics. Although he's now most famous for Starship Troopers, particularly because of the controversy the film adaptation of that novel caused. Before that, he was probably best known as the author of Stranger in a Strange Land, which was written in 1961, and that became an instant classic for the so-called counterculture of the late 60s. So he was a very influential and very groundbreaking figure in his own way in science fiction.
I read Starship Troopers when I was 12 years old and thought it was marvelous. And I think that memory stayed with me as I grew up and entered the movie business. And I always thought it would be a neat movie, as a lot of people did, I think. And I had been playing around with an idea which I think was pretty much inspired by Starship Troopers. And it was sort of a teenage love triangle set in a future war setting. I liked the idea of the melodrama, and I wanted to do a war movie that was sort of a throwback to the gung-ho propaganda movies of the 40s and the 50s. John Davison, as a good producer, checked into the rights.
And we figured, well, here's this classic book that it's been ripped off by everybody from Jim Cameron to the Japanese. And, somebody must have owned it. Somebody must have bought it over the years. And surprisingly, the rights were available, which was a complete shock.
So suddenly I found myself in a kind of a scary position of adapting this book that I loved, and a book that is considered by many a classic. The challenge was to try to keep the sort of the philosophy and the intent of Heinlein, but also to move it into essentially an action movie as opposed to a philosophical treatise about why democracy won't work and why fascism or some form of neo-fascism would be more desirable.
The first thing that I heard about it was from Ed Neumeyer, who told me very vaguely the story about young people going to fight giant bugs. And that seemed a little bit a strange idea, but it was attractive because it was kind of a childhood dream, It was different, and of course it gave me the opportunity, which I thought was extremely important for me, to work with Phil Tippett.
What I really wanted to do was make a movie that seemed, on one hand, to say, let's just go and kill a bunch of fucking bugs, man, it's gonna be great. But on the other hand, at the very end of it, I wanted to say, look at yourself in the mirror and look at what you become when you do this. I just wanted to make that sort of statement.
It was based on the assumption that what happens if Hitler would have won? How would the world look like? And the world would be a worldwide fascist, military-oriented government.
Well, we tried to use everything from the book that we could, but the problem was there wasn't enough in the book to make a film. We took the characters that were there, we combined a couple of characters, we added new characters, we added more narrative, we added the double love triangles, which weren't in the book, and tried to incorporate some things from the book that never made it into the finished film. We wanted to do the drop capsules, which is how the troopers left their ships They went down in capsules, and that's why they were called cap troopers. And we wanted to preserve the on the bounce. You could propel yourself up into the air, you know, and fly hundreds of yards and come down. We wanted to do that, and we wanted to have the power armor. We lost them for budgetary reasons and to some extent for dramatic reasons, because we just thought if we got hundreds of people jumping around like grasshoppers, A, you got all these people on wires, it's going to take forever to shoot it, we'll never afford to do it, and B, it's going to look silly if we don't do it brilliantly. And also, if you have all these people hovering up in the air, you know, why aren't they just shooting down on the bugs and hovering up in the air, you know? So it reduced the jeopardy element.
1, 2, 3.
When they originally began thinking about who they were actually going to sign on to portray characters like Johnny Rico and Carmen Ibanez and Dizzy, Ace Levy and all the other people, the younger performers who were talented and who were worth exploring further were mostly involved in television or working on other films.
I felt that it was important to have these young people really young, so that the innocence would be there in the beginning and you would not already feel that it was a cheat. And so I had to choose actors that were more in their early 20s than in the late 20s or say early 30s. And of course, there are not really stars available at that age.
So it then became obvious that they were going to have to go for virtual unknowns to a certain extent. People with some kind of experience that they felt would fill the shoes of the characters and, more importantly, live up to Paul's inner visualization of those characters.
We tried to find people that were resembling a proto-fascist ideal.
I'll go for that.
And we felt that it was interesting to really make the audience feel that this society is kind of self-discriminatory by saying, okay, the good people are the beautiful people.
They're perfect. They look like they belong on a Southern California beach at high summer sometime, and they seem to be vacuous.
35%, very nice.
And this is all Paul's kind of subversive and hidden way of just pushing his own agenda, what he's trying to, comment on the social conditions of this futuristic world that's going on.
First thing Fleet Academy looks at is your math scores. Wish me luck.
The script called for a generation of young, beautiful-looking actors and actresses.
Every sort of young actor in Hollywood had at one point done a couple of episodes of Melrose Place. So it was sort of a good-looking, young Melrose Place kind of cast.
People used to call it Melrose Space when we were making it. But that was kind of cool to me. I thought, that's all right.
Look at him. You ever seen anybody so pleased with himself?
I think I definitely looked like the right role. I think when I went in there and I spoke with him, we developed a good relationship, and it was fun. When I first went in, I went into Ed Neumeyer's room, and I grabbed the rifle that he had, and I kicked it up, and I did a couple twists with it and twirls that I'd done in drill team when I was in military school. And they just got a kick out of that. And then I talked about my military background and family and my beliefs. I'll take it. Till I get killed or you find someone better. This was my first real big film, and it was an amazing experience.
My dad had to help me pack. Suddenly he's afraid he's never going to see me again or something.
I think it's, about people and their values and this and that and love and all that. And then the war.
Who's next?
Sir! Recruit Flores, reporting for duty, sir.
They initially wanted me to read for Carmen. And I just, when I read the script, I said, wait a minute, this is all wrong here. I can't see these words coming out of my mouth. This is just not right. And then I see, Dizzy's character as I'm reading it, and I'm just like, wait, I should be going out for this.
You want to flip 6-3 whole play and you could score.
I just think I'm more the tomboy.
She came in, she wanted to play the role. Paul cast her instantly, and we never called her back for anything.
Looks like I'm your girl, sir.
It's school kids. They're just coming out of school, and people that age, in their 17s, whatever, they don't have a strong personality yet. You need the young generation to fight, to kill, and not to think. That's why it's cast that way, that it's not about strong personalities, which they have to lose. It's people with a surface, but you cannot see behind the surface.
I think it is meant to be a bit of an artificial movie. That's why I like the casting for the movie. That's why I like the artificial. I mean, the movie looks plasticine sometimes.
You could do something like that, yeah?
The public persona that Paul Verhoeven has is of this kind of like barely contained wild man who's always out there trying to show full frontal fornication and decapitations every moment he can. That may, in an exaggerated way, be a part of Paul's personality, but Paul is also a very serious man and a very intelligent man. He's certainly the only director I know who has a PhD in mathematics.
All of his films are amazingly visceral and intellectual at the same time. You can relate to it on a purely intellectual level, but it's also almost impossible not to feel it on a visceral one as well.
Hold it there, and now it's hoovering there. He's talking, till he spits, drift, and goes up and down.
Paul is very demanding.
Keep your eyes a little bit more on the brain part.
Whereas a lot of people would accept something that's marginal, he won't. But the results usually speak for themselves because he gets top quality work.
He just is so full of passion about what he's doing that he just goes and goes and goes, and he just leaves everybody else physically exhausted.
He's one of those guys that's totally into what he's doing, knows everything. I mean, we'd go through these meetings, and I'd leave the meeting feeling numb, you know, of all the things that we had to build and who was doing what. And he would seem to hold everything in his head.
Verhoeven himself did over 4,000 of his own storyboards, which he then handed into the storyboard department. And Paul was constantly drawing, and Paul was doing things on the side of his scripts. He was doing full-blown production sketches. He was doing little panels.
He's an actor's director. He will use every technique he possibly can just to pull out anything out of you that he doesn't feel like he's getting.
Johnny, look.
And he's just enough to play off of alone, even if he didn't have everything. Just the way he is. He's so insane.
A lot of our scenes where we're reacting to bugs that aren't there, he really gets down in there with us. He was in the dirt making these noises all day long for us to have something to react to.
I love your sound effects.
I would even turn around and start shooting, and get it.
And he'll come over and go, "Come on, let's shoot it! Let's do it! Come on!" And he'll get in there and he runs and he acts like a bug going, "Ah!
Back and forth! Now, it's attack! Ah!"
He's a motivator.
I think if Paul told me to sit in the corner on my head and spit nickels, I could do it.
He's very focused, and I find it very difficult to be this focused with such a big movie, with so many things to think about. And he's still able to keep some sort of sense of humor about himself. Paul has total control, and that's why it's great working for him, because you trust him, because you've seen RoboCop and you've seen Total Recall, and this is exactly that kind of movie, so you know it's going to be done really well.
You would never think that a liberal European Dutchman with a strong intellectual bent would be interested in a novel like Starship Troopers. But actually, I think that it resonated with many personal experiences that Paul had had on his own.
I was 2 years in the military in Holland when I was a Navy officer, when I was drafted, which was in the 60s, of course. It was a long time ago, but I had never really used that too much in a movie, that knowledge. The three of them would be about here, and then there's about somewhere here.
He cut his teeth, artistically speaking, on documentaries that he did while in the military in Holland. And then he also has this very strong formative period of 1938 to 1945 when his daily existence is completely surrounded and steeped and soaked in warfare.
He was born at the height of the event that defines probably the 20th century, World War II. He was living under the Nazi boot. V-2 rockets were going off over his house, and Lancaster bombers were dropping bombs in his front yard when they missed the V-2s.
And that had resulted in one of what I consider to be his finest films, a Dutch movie called Soldier of Orange. This was an opportunity for him to reinvest his interest in World War II war movies in a science fiction setting.
It was a very conscious decision to use the outlook and the techniques and the strategy and whatever of World War II, plus perhaps even the visualization of that, to copy that a little bit.
So here you have a culture that can fly to outer space, can go to different planets, and yet when it confronts a foe, uses World War II type cased ammunition with, hard projectiles and drops bombs. Paul was returning to a lot of the old World War II combat film tropes, where you had massive invasion forces who only had their carbines. All these World War II tactics and weapons, which had just been altered a little bit, just to make them appear a bit more friendly to the future.
The ships are like flying fortresses. It looks like B-17s coming in over a planet. And the drop ships, which replace the power armor, look like Normandy invasion things with the rams that come down. It's very easy to read Starship Troopers as a condemnation of military force, and it's not, because the military loves that movie.
Foxtrot 4, Blade 6. Pass your unit through, Blade 1, over. Doc, casualties?
0, sir.
Very well.
Dale Dye was a military advisor on the picture, and basically it was his job to take the actors and to take the extras and make them look like soldiers on screen.
But you got to get deep before you make your turn. Yes, sir. Just get your squad leader in here and tell him, look for those rocks, and then make his cut.
He had formed this group called Warriors, Inc., and the first film he did, I think, was a picture called Platoon. After that, he was quite in demand, and is sort of Mr. Hollywood military movie guy.
Lieutenant Willie, I'm trying to work on it here.
He was an ex-Marine Corps veteran who served in Vietnam. He takes it very seriously and was often annoyed at us for not following the strict Marine Corps line on various things.
Your people are to be screaming in full dudgeon at this point. This is war crime. We will kill some bastards, and I want to hear about it before you hit that camera.
Warriors Incorporated and Dye's whole reason for being is to set up accelerated, compacted, compressed, intense periods of training, like little mini boot camps for actors and performers before a film starts.
The key is your right hand on the pistol grip and be looking around controlling your unit.
We had a 11-day boot camp before the film started.
It was all on location in Casper, Wyoming. They took the primary people out and showed them military maneuvers, how to handle weapons, varying tactics and that type of thing.
We went to Wyoming and we were there for 2 weeks. We were in a real boot camp situation in the middle of nowhere. We did field training exercises every day for 2 weeks. He really trained us well. He got us in a mindset that was totally different.
We get you, sir!
By the time the 2 weeks had gone by and the actual crew for the film showed up there, we were all sitting around looking at the crew thinking, oh, you civilian idiots decide to show up, huh? You're nothing. Who are you? We were, in essence, soldiers for real.
Are there any questions?
No, sir!
Is there anyone who cannot see the sign with the oath of enlistment on it?
No, sir!
Very well. Raise your right hand.
I do now, of my own free will, after having been duly advised and warned of the meaning and consequences of this oath, enrolled in federal service for not less than 2 years, and much longer than may be required by the means of the Federation.
Keep your right hand in the air. Stand by to do it again.
Ladies and gentlemen, clear the area. We're going to have a walkthrough with the extras.
Captain Dye, who had trained the primary cast, also handpicked 4 or 5 of the extras and put them into the boot camp at the same time. Once they had graduated, he put them in charge of their own squads and platoons of extras.
Try to listen up. Our cue is going to be delayed. We're going to be cued on the radio by the captain. So stand by. It's going to be a little bit longer.
It was hilarious to watch on location because you'd see 20 kids in these horribly heavy, suffocating costumes with their weapons at the ready, close order drilling to lunch, and they were deadly serious about it, and they really enjoyed it. These were kids from Montana and Wyoming who were given 110% and were actually living the role of a cap trooper, in all its harshness.
You start off with this piece of music, which is almost silly. It needs to be jingoistic, it's very positive, it's also very camp. It's kind of a dangerous way to start a movie. All of the mobile infantry was based on a kind of unusual harmonic bass, a scale that I tried to keep the whole film in because I wanted it to have the sense that that was the world that they were in. It's very odd sounding. It's very Stravinsky in a way. It's the first time I've ever considered using it as the harmonic basis of the entire score.
What we wanted is to do basically a propaganda film for this government in the future that was trying to recruit young people to come and go and fight in this foreign war. The society that's doing this is a fascist utopia. It's a society that works, that has very little crime and has very little poverty. It was a world that was very ordered, that was very regimented, but it doesn't accept any deviation, any individuality.
It's a really pure society, and the language that we use is a little bit of the 50s.
He's always late when he walks you home to fish for a kiss.
In its overly innocent tone.
Marco's sister made pilot.
So will you. Which is funny and is artistic. On the other hand, again, was perhaps something why people felt it was a bit weird.
Join the mobile infantry and save the world. Service guarantees citizenship.
Well, the film starts with a direct paraphrase of Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will. The I'm doing my part FedNet sequence.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
Paul was, of course, very familiar with Leni Riefenstahl's work and emulated it in the FedNet. The compositions are very precise in terms of the people and the movement of people within the frame.
If you look at the movies that we copied ourselves, in the movies of Leni Riefenstahl, Triumph of the Will, and you see all these German people that are listening to Hitler and are basically ready to go to war, and you see all their faces, she emphasizes the beauty. All the shots of people in Triumph of the Will are beautiful. They're all beautiful kids. She never shot kids that didn't look so good. So it's all blondish, this and that.
We break net now and take you live to Klendathu, where the invasion has begun.
The closest thing in tone is American and English World War II films.
We still use that kind of simplicity that you feel in these propaganda movies. They were all done, of course, to get the American people ready to fight.
Come on, you weak! You want to live forever! We need you all. Service guarantees citizenship.
You go to a movie about young people who are going to become space cadets and Starship troopers and go out and fight, except the subtext is that the propaganda and the government spin kind of cons them into thinking that this is the way to go.
But it's more than that. It's the FedNet. It feels Big Brotherish. It feels like it's, I don't know, that was always the idea was, this is all you see.
And we're really only being told what someone or something or some entity or some even international government might want us to know.
Everything in it is so one-sided and, in a sense, rather disgusting. There's a moment in there where a group of children is seen stomping on living cockroaches, and they're saying, this is what should happen to the bugs. That, to me, is flat-out propaganda.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
It shows you that these people's lives and their access to information is totally under the control of the world government that they basically serve.
Who wants to hold it? Citizen rule. People making a better tomorrow.
Paul had that idea of the soldiers giving out bullets. The guys are laughing. It's really insidious.
It's absurd. And that's, Paul really tried to stress that point. People didn't understand that. They thought that maybe he was glorifying war.
I think it's a total send-up of a propaganda movie.
Guilty. Sentence, death. Execution tonight at 6. All net, all channels. Would you like to know more?
When I first read the script, I wanted to know what Paul was doing, and I went to him and said, what's your take on this? And he says, it's no good to say that right-wing fascist societies don't work. He says, you stand on a soapbox and you wave your finger, nobody cares. He says, so I'm going to show the world a fascist right-wing society, and a functioning one, you know, and let them see it. He says, but the truth is it's only good for killing bugs.
Here's a tip. Aim for the nerve stem and put it down for good.
The whole movie is this very Wagnerian, Nietzschean idea.
Force, my friends, is violence, the supreme authority from which all other authority is derived.
When Paul sprung the, Gestapo uniform on you in the third act.
Officer on deck.
Carry on.
If you get it, you think it's audacious, maybe. Or you think Paul's just playing with his Nazi fantasies again. But I mean, it's audacious, I think. And I think that if you don't get it, you go, hey, and I think you feel vaguely like, I was liking those people, but I'm not supposed to like that image, and I think that's what's brilliant about it.
We're in this for the species, boys and girls. It's simple numbers. They have more.
War makes fascists of anyone who engages in it.
The fascist ideologies, they always need an enemy where you can combine all your people towards something. And that's something that's always, you have to create an enemy if you don't have one. And so they created their enemies on the stars, on the planets.
To ensure that human civilization, not insect, dominates this galaxy now and always.
I mean, that's basically the thinking. We are humans and we are better than anything. And so we should be in wherever we want, we should be able to be the master, like the Dutch and the Portuguese and the Spanish thought in the 17th century.
You kill anything that has more than 2 legs, you get me? We get you, sir!
One of the things people do in war is they completely dehumanize the enemy. They can't be human. And that's what Starship Troopers is saying. It basically makes the enemy into bugs, and then it's okay to step on them.
I think the insects are much less, let's say, guilty than Adolf Hitler. Because they are not necessarily bad, you know, they're just defending their territory.
What is Paul saying about America of the 20th century by the Earth he sees, you know, in the future happening in Starship Troopers? Well, what he's saying, and to a certain extent, is this is a world where people are completely controlled by the government and by the military and only follow their lockstep marching orders. Now, those are strong words when you state them that way, but if you look at that world, that's exactly what that world is. There is no differentiation of ideas and policies. It's all one. It's all military, it's all might, and it's all us. And those things are all very frightening.
Some audiences got this movie and some audiences didn't. We were hoping that fighting giant bugs would be enough for the people that didn't want to look beneath the surface. And we were also hoping that the politics of the movie would be clear, which is taking Heinlein's world and showing you how horrible it could be.
It's easy to misinterpret this film, of course, because it needs a lot of thinking about the background of the society at that time.
What's always confounded me about the critical reaction to Starship Troopers when it was originally released was that virtually no major critic realized that this film was a satire.
It's kind of shocking they didn't get it. I guess we blew it if they didn't get it.
There was talk of that this is a Nazi film, that it actually promulgated Nazism. It was ludicrous.
Then the Washington Post wrote an editorial about the movie saying that this was a very dangerous anti-American movie because it was promoting fascist ideals and it was portraying a Nazi society. And that article was taken over by all the European newspapers without having seen the movie. And so when we came to Europe, when I did publicity, then in all the countries, but mostly in the ex-fascist countries, notably of course Germany, Italy and France, there was certainly a movement against the movie. People attacked us immediately when I was sitting down there as being a fascist.
Nobody saw the irony of what we were trying to achieve.
You're always warned, you know, that irony is the one thing you shouldn't do in motion pictures. Trying to be ironic was perhaps a mistake. Perhaps we should have just laid all our cards on the table so everyone would understand that this liberal Dutchman was not decided to remake Triumph of the Will.
It's very difficult to change the perception of a movie when it's already has been put on the front page of all the big newspapers saying Paul Verhoeven fascist movie.
And it's only now, 4 years after the film's release, that at least here in the United States, the more discerning critics are finally willing to give Paul the benefit of doubt that he actually knew what he was about when he presented the film in the way he did.
When I did publicity of Hollow Man, they now said, how come that after such a beautiful movie like Starship Troopers, you did such a piece of shit like Hollow Man? Looking at the animosity that's on Earth, and the criminality, and the darkness, and the wars we are not really nice people. We are not a benevolent species in any way. We are killers. Because we are that way, you have to assume that life in the universe is that way. And if there would be other species that would, say, be 20,000 years ahead of us in their evolution, and they would know that something like a nice little planet is here, that would be extremely dangerous to notify them of our existence.